Don't hurt him. I'll buy him, she said. Call him savage all you want. Clara had always been the kind of person who noticed the little things other people ignored. She could spot a tiny flower growing between cracks in the sidewalk, a bird struggling to fly in the wind, or a stray animal shivering in the cold. It was this attention to detail, this empathy, that made her walk a little slower on that bright, crisp morning in the small town she had recently moved to. Clara had come to this quiet corner of the country seeking peace after years of bustling city life. But even here, she found that life's quiet corners often hid stories waiting to be discovered. As she wandered down a dusty, sunlit lane lined with weathered wooden fences, she noticed something that made her heart tighten. Tied to one of the fences, just beyond a cluster of wildflowers, was a dog. At first glance, he seemed ordinary enough, but there was something in the way he held himself that made Clara pause. He was thin, far thinner than he should have been, his ribs slightly visible beneath a coat that was rough and dull from neglect. His ears flicked back nervously whenever someone passed, and his eyes, dark and wary, followed her every movement. The dog wasn't barking nor growling yet, but Clara could feel the tension radiating from him. It was as if he expected trouble to arrive at any moment. A few children ran past laughing, and the dog flinched, ducking his head and lowering his body, almost curling in on himself. Clara's heart ached. She had always had a soft spot for animals, especially those who seemed afraid or misunderstood. Without thinking, she stepped closer. "Hey there," she said softly, her voice gentle, careful not to startle him. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The dog's eyes narrowed. He didn't move, didn't wag his tail, but he didn't run either. Clara could tell that years of mistrust and perhaps even mistreatment had made him cautious. She could see scars along his legs, tiny marks that told stories of struggles he had endured silently. Her heart clenched. She had read about cases like this. Animals abandoned, ignored, or treated poorly, left to fend for themselves. And she knew that even a little kindness could mean the world to them. Clara glanced around. The fence he was tied to belonged to a small property with a run-down stable. The paint was peeling, and the wooden gate sagged on one hinge. From the look of it, no one had cared for this place properly in a long time. She wondered how long the dog had been out here, alone, waiting, hoping someone might notice him. And now, finally, someone had. A man appeared at the gate, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. He was middle-aged, his clothes worn and dusty, and he gave her a skeptical look. "What do you want?" he asked gruffly. "That's my dog." There was a certain hardness in his tone that told her he wasn't used to people taking interest. Still, she stepped forward, her hands held out slightly to show she meant no harm. I just noticed him," she said carefully. "Can I help him? Maybe take care of him?" The man's lips pressed into a thin line, and he glanced at the dog with something like irritation. "Take care of him? He's fine. Don't need your help. People round here don't buy trouble, missy." Clara's heart sank, but she didn't back down. She had a feeling, a strong one, that this dog needed help, and maybe, she thought, someone needed to teach others to see the value of kindness too. "I'll buy him," she said quietly but firmly. "I don't care how much. I'll take him. I just want him to be safe." The man raised an eyebrow. "Buy him? You don't know what you're asking for. He's, difficult. People call him savage, for a reason." Clara's stomach tightened. Call him whatever you want, she said softly, but I know he doesn't deserve to be hurt. I just want to give him a chance. The man studied her, then the dog, who had now taken a cautious step toward the fence, sniffing the air, watching the interaction. There was a pause that seemed to stretch forever. Finally, with a shrug, the man muttered, "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you." "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking slightly, though it was mostly from excitement and relief. She reached slowly into her bag, pulling out the money she had set aside for emergencies. The man took it without another word, and with a final glance at the dog, he walked away. Clara knelt down carefully, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. The dog watched her, wary, but he didn't run. She could see the tension in his muscles, the way he kept his body low, ready to react if necessary. "Hi, Savage," she whispered, letting the name roll off her tongue softly. "I think it suits you. But don't worry, you're safe now." The dog cocked his head slightly, sniffing the air between them. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Curiosity? Hesitation? Perhaps both. Clara didn't push. She knew that trust, once broken, could not be rushed. Carefully, she unfastened the rope that had bound him to the fence. He didn't move, standing rigid as she worked, his dark eyes fixed on hers. When the rope was free, he didn't run, but he didn't come closer either. Clara smiled softly. "It's okay," she said. "No one's going to hurt you anymore." As they walked toward her car, the dog finally took a tentative step forward, then another, until he was beside her. Every movement was careful, deliberate, as if he were testing the world again. Clara could feel his fear, but also his spark, the spark of resilience that had kept him alive through everything he had endured. The ride home was quiet. Clara didn't try to force a connection, knowing that he needed time. She left the seat beside her empty, giving him space. Occasionally, he would glance at her from the corner of his eye, then look back at the window, unsure. But he didn't panic. He hadn't run away, and that was a start. When they arrived at her small, cozy home, Clara opened the door and let him step inside. He paused at the threshold, sniffing the air, his tail tucked slightly between his legs. The house was warm and smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. Nothing like the harsh smell of the stable he had left behind. "This is your home now," Clara said softly. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." The dog hesitated, then stepped in slowly, padding across the floor with cautious steps. Clara knelt down to meet him at eye level. "I'm not going to hurt you," she whispered. "I promise." He sniffed her hand, hesitant at first, then pressed his nose against it, as if testing the promise. Clara felt a rush of emotion, relief, hope, and something else, a quiet joy that came from knowing she was giving this dog a chance at life. For the rest of the day he explored his new home cautiously, moving from room to room, sniffing corners and furniture, always keeping her within sight. Clara didn't push him, didn't call him or try to pet him. She simply sat nearby, reading a book, letting him become familiar with the space. By evening, he had curled up on a soft blanket in the corner of the living room. Clara watched him, her heart full. He wasn't wagging his tail or playing yet, but he was calm, and he was safe. For Clara, that was enough. That night, she stayed up late, thinking about the journey that had brought them together. She knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges ahead, moments of fear, hesitation, and testing boundaries. But she also knew that with patience, love, and understanding, they could face them together. Clara whispered into the quiet room, "You're not savage. You're just you. And I'm going to help you remember that." The dog's chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths. For the first time in what must have been a long while, he felt safe. And for Clara, that was the beginning of something extraordinary, a bond that neither fear nor time could break. The next morning, Clara woke to the soft light of dawn spilling through her curtains. The house was quiet except for the faint rustle of the wind outside. She stretched and glanced toward the corner where Savage had curled up the night before. He was still asleep, his chest rising and falling steadily, a faint twitch of a paw suggesting he might have been dreaming. For Clara, it was a small victory. He had chosen to stay in her home, to rest here, and that alone was a sign that trust was slowly beginning to grow. She moved quietly to the kitchen, not wanting to startle him. The smell of fresh toast and brewed coffee filled the air. Clara poured herself a cup and grabbed a small bag of dog food she had bought the day before. She remembered the wary look on his face when he had sniffed at her hand. Food, she knew, could be a bridge between caution and trust. Carrying the food, she crouched near the blanket. Breakfast time. She set down the bowl a few feet away from him and stepped back. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, cautiously, he approached the bowl. He sniffed at it, lifted his nose, and looked back at Clara, as if seeking permission. She smiled and nodded gently. "Go ahead." Savage ate carefully, taking small bites, his ears flicking with every sound. Clara watched him, noting the way his tail moved slightly as he relaxed. It was a small, almost invisible sign, but to her, it spoke volumes. He was beginning to feel safe enough to let his guard down, even just a little. After breakfast, Ara decided it was time to let him explore the backyard. The garden behind her house was small but filled with soft grass and a few flower beds she had planted herself. She opened the back door slowly, speaking softly as she did.
"It's okay, Savage."
"You can go out if you want. No one's going to hurt you." For a moment he hesitated at the threshold. Then, with cautious steps, he padded outside. The grass felt soft under his paws, and the morning sun warmed his fur. He sniffed at the flowers, the fence, and the ground, occasionally glancing back at Clara. She stayed seated on the porch, letting him take his time, giving him the freedom to explore without pressure. Hours passed like this, slow and peaceful. Savage began to wander further, testing the boundaries of his new world. Clara noticed how he occasionally looked up at her, almost as if seeking reassurance. She found herself smiling at these small gestures. Each one was a step forward, a tiny victory in the delicate process of building trust. By midday, she knew he needed more than just space. He needed care. She decided to take him to the local veterinary clinic for a checkup. She had prepared herself for the possibility of bad news, injuries, illness, or conditions caused by neglect, but she also hoped for the best. Clara carefully leashed Savage, moving slowly to avoid startling him. He stiffened at first, but eventually allowed her to guide him. The walk to the car was slow. He sniffed every corner of the street, cautious but curious. People in the town stared as they passed, whispering and pointing. Suddenly, "That's the dog they call Savage," one woman murmured. "She's brave to take him in." Clara ignored the murmurs, focusing on the task at hand. She opened the car door and gently guided him in. He hesitated, then stepped inside. She buckled her seatbelt and glanced at him in the rearview mirror. He sat quietly, ears flicking at the sounds of passing cars, eyes wide with curiosity and caution. The vet's office was busy with the usual morning bustle. Clara tried to keep her voice calm and soothing, speaking to Savage as they waited. "It's okay. You're safe. No one's going to hurt you here." The receptionist gave her a sympathetic smile as they were called in. The veterinarian, a kind middle-aged woman named Dr. Lewis, knelt down to examine him. She spoke gently, allowing him to sniff her hands first. Savage tensed but did not pull away. Clara watched closely, her heart in her throat. Dr. Lewis checked his weight, his teeth, and his coat. "He's underweight, but not dangerously so," she said. "Some scars here and there. Looks like he had a rough time, but nothing permanent. With care, he'll recover fully." Clara exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Relief washed over her. "Can you help him feel comfortable?" she asked.
He's been through a lot.
Dr. Lewis smiled. "We'll make sure he's healthy and comfortable. You're doing a good thing by giving him a chance." The visit continued with vaccinations, nail trimming, and a gentle bath. Savage, though initially hesitant, allowed the vet to touch him. Clara spoke softly all the while, reassuring him with her voice. By the time they left, he seemed calmer, his body less tense. He walked beside her back to the car, a small step toward trust and understanding. Back home, Clara prepared a cozy corner for him with blankets and a few toys. She watched as he curled up in the space, sniffing the blankets and finally settling down. She knew the journey would not be quick. Trust was not something that could be rushed, but each small step counted. Over the next few days, Clara and Savage settled into a quiet routine. Mornings began with food and gentle words. Days were filled with slow walks, play in the garden, and soft-spoken moments indoors. Evenings brought calm, with Savage resting near Clara as she read or wrote in her journal. One afternoon, while Clara was tidying the garden, she noticed Savage watching a butterfly hover over the flowers. His ears perked, his body tense with curiosity, but he didn't chase or snap. He simply observed, fascinated. Clara smiled. It was the first time she had seen him interested in something for pure enjoyment rather than survival. As the weeks passed, small changes became noticeable. He began to wag his tail lightly when she approached. He allowed her to pet him gently, sometimes leaning into her hand. At night, he would follow her from room to room, staying close but not anxious. Each day he seemed to shed a little more of the fear and mistrust that had defined him for so long. Clara, too, changed. Caring for Savage brought her a sense of purpose and fulfillment she hadn't realized she was missing. She spent hours reading about dog behavior, learning ways to encourage confidence and trust. She discovered that patience, consistency, and understanding were far more powerful than force or punishment. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Clara sat on the porch with Savage by her side. He rested his head on her lap, his eyes half closed, a sign of complete trust. She stroked his fur gently, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. "You're doing so well," she whispered. "I knew you could trust me. I knew there was more to you than fear." Savage let out a soft sigh, a sound that seemed almost like contentment. For Clara, it was a moment of quiet triumph. She had rescued him, yes, but in truth, he had rescued her in return. From loneliness, from routine, from the small hesitations of life that made days feel ordinary. The town began to take notice as well. People who once whispered about the savage dog now nodded politely when they saw him. Some came closer to offer food or kind words, inspired by Clara's patience and care. Savage, once feared and mistrusted, was slowly becoming a symbol of transformation and hope. Clara knew there would be challenges ahead. Some days he would still flinch at sudden noises or strangers. Some nights he would whine softly, haunted by memories she could not see. But she also knew that love, patience, and understanding could heal wounds unseen, and she was determined to walk this path with him, no matter how long it took. By the end of that first month, Savage had not only grown stronger but also more confident. He explored the backyard freely, chased falling leaves, and even attempted tentative play with a ball Clara had bought. The bond between them had deepened into something unspoken but powerful, a connection built on trust, respect, and shared experience. Clara often thought back to the day she had first seen him, tied to the fence, wary and alone. It seemed like a different lifetime. Now, as she watched him lie in the grass, ears flicking at the gentle wind, she knew that the journey was just beginning. There would be more challenges, more obstacles to overcome, but together they had already come so far. And in that quiet moment, she whispered again, "You're safe now, Savage. And you always will be." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into a month. Clara had begun to notice that Savage was no longer the frightened, wary dog he had been when she first found him. Each morning he greeted her at the bedroom door, tail wagging slightly, his eyes filled with a quiet curiosity. It was a small change, but to Clara, it was monumental. She could see that he was beginning to understand the rhythm of life in her home, that he could relax and trust, even if only a little. Clara continued their morning routine carefully, always soft-spoken and patient. She would prepare his breakfast, speaking to him gently all the while. "Good morning, Savage. Time for breakfast," she would say, and he would trot to his bowl with cautious eagerness. Some days he would hesitate at the first step, watching her closely, as if confirming that she meant no harm. But every day he took that step a little faster, his trust growing like a fragile plant reaching for the sun. After breakfast, Clara would take him to the garden. The grass had grown thick and soft, and she had planted flowers and small shrubs that provided shade and hiding spots. Savage spent hours exploring, sniffing the flowers, rolling in the grass, and chasing the occasional butterfly. Clara watched him with a quiet smile, noticing the subtle changes, the way he lifted his head higher, the way his ears twitched in interest rather than fear. It was during these times that Clara began to see a side of him that had been buried under fear for so long. He was playful, curious, and surprisingly gentle. He would bring her sticks, drop them at her feet, and nudge her hand for attention. Sometimes he would even roll onto his back, exposing his belly, the ultimate sign of trust in a dog. Clara's heart swelled each time this happened. She had saved him, yes, but in truth, he was also teaching her about patience, resilience, and the quiet joy of earning trust. One afternoon, Clara decided it was time to try a small walk beyond her yard. She wanted to show him the world outside their little home, but she knew she had to be careful. He was still wary of strangers and loud noises, and she didn't want to push him too quickly. She clipped on his leash and spoke softly. "We'll go slowly today, Savage. Just a little walk."
You can come back anytime you want.
Savage looked at her, ears perked, then glanced at the open gate. After a moment's hesitation, he stepped forward. The grass gave way to the dirt path that led down the lane, and the wind carried new smells, flowers, the river in the distance, and even the faint scent of other animals. Every sound made him flinch slightly, but Clara's calm presence beside him kept him steady. As they walked, people in the town began to notice. Children waved, some stopping to call out, "Look, it's Savage." Adults nodded in acknowledgement, many still skeptical but curious. Savage's body language changed depending on who approached. At first he would stiffen, ready to retreat. But as Clara guided him with patience, he began to relax. He sniffed hands cautiously, allowed a gentle pat, and even wagged his tail lightly. Clara felt a deep sense of pride. This transformation wasn't instant, but it was real. The dog, once feared and avoided by everyone, was now engaging with the world, slowly learning that kindness could be stronger than fear. Each encounter, no matter how small, was a step forward in his journey. Back home, Clara spent time working on his training. Not the kind that relied on commands alone, but the kind that focused on trust and understanding. She encouraged him to sit, to come when called, and to wait patiently. Every time he succeeded, she rewarded him with gentle praise, a soft pat, or a favorite treat. The lessons weren't just about obedience. They were about building confidence and reinforcing the idea that the world could be a safe place. One evening, while Clara was reading on the porch, she noticed Savage lying nearby, his head resting on his paws, eyes half closed. But then he perked up, ears twitching, and trotted over to her with a small toy in his mouth, a worn ball she had bought weeks earlier. He dropped it at her feet and looked up expectantly. Clara laughed softly, picking up the ball and tossing it a short distance. Savage ran after it, ears flapping, his movements fluid and joyful. He brought it back, tail wagging, and dropped it at her feet again. This simple game became a daily ritual. Each time they played, Clara could see his confidence growing. He was no longer just reacting to the world around him. He was engaging with it. He explored, learned, and even made choices, a sign that the fear and caution of his past were slowly being replaced with curiosity and joy. Savage, the dog once labeled as dangerous and savage by the town, was showing a gentle and protective side. He watched over Clara during her chores, staying close when she was in the garden or fetching water. He barked softly when someone approached the gate, not aggressively but as a warning, a signal that he cared and wanted to keep his space safe. Clara saw this as a positive sign. He was learning boundaries, not aggression. One weekend, Clara invited a few friends over, curious to see how Savage would react to new people. She prepared herself for nervous behavior, but was amazed by his response. Initially, he observed quietly from a corner, watching the visitors carefully. When one of Clara's friends knelt down and extended a hand slowly, Savage sniffed cautiously and then, after a brief pause, allowed a gentle pat. He wagged his tail slightly, a small but meaningful gesture. The friends were impressed. "He's amazing," one of them said. "You can see he trusts you completely." Clara smiled, her eyes soft with emotion. "It's taken time, patience, and a lot of care," she replied. "But he's learning that the world can be kind." Evenings were now filled with quiet companionship. Savage would curl up beside her as she wrote in her journal or read books. Sometimes he would rest his head on her lap, and she would stroke his fur gently. There was a comfort in these moments, a bond that needed no words. Clara often thought about how far they had come, from that first day when he had been tied to a fence, scared and alone, to now when he trusted her completely and even began to enjoy life again. One rainy afternoon, Clara noticed something new. Savage was beginning to show signs of playfulness even indoors. He would chase shadows on the floor, nudge toys around, and occasionally leap with excitement at small noises. His energy was returning, his spirit growing stronger with each passing day. Clara laughed, feeling a warmth in her chest that only comes from seeing someone blossom after hardship. The local community began to take notice too. People who once whispered about Savage, the dangerous dog, now paused to admire him. Children would wave from the street, and he would respond with a cautious wag or a gentle bark. Adults nodded respectfully, impressed by the transformation. Clara realized that Savage's story was not just about one dog. It was about the power of patience, care, and kindness to change perceptions. Despite all the progress, Clara knew that trust could still be fragile. Some nights Savage would wake and whine softly, memories of fear lingering in his mind. But Clara was always there, speaking in her gentle voice, reassuring him and letting him know he was safe. Each time he relaxed again, learning slowly that the world was no longer a place of fear, but of security and love. One particularly warm evening, Clara and Savage sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the hills. The sky was painted with soft shades of orange, pink, and purple. Birds chirped in the distance, and the wind rustled through the trees. Savage rested his head on Clara's knee, eyes half closed, completely at ease.
"You've come so far, Savage," Clara whispered.
"I knew you had it in you, even when no one else did. You're strong, brave, and kind. And I promise I'll always be here for you." Savage lifted his head briefly, eyes meeting hers, as if understanding every word. Then he rested again, a small sigh escaping him. Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and gratitude. She had rescued him, yes, but he had also rescued her. From loneliness, from routine, and from the quiet ache of a life that sometimes felt ordinary. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Clara realized that their journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, perhaps moments of doubt or hesitation. But together they had proven that love, patience, and trust could overcome fear and transform lives. Savage had changed, yes, but so had she. They were partners now, bound by experience, compassion, and the quiet understanding that they would always be there for one another. And in that calm, starlit night, Clara whispered once more, "You're not Savage anymore. You're so much more. You're brave, kind, and free. And I couldn't be prouder of you." Spring had fully arrived, bringing warmth and life back into the quiet town. The trees were lush with green leaves, flowers bloomed in brilliant colors, and the air smelled sweet with the scent of blossoms. Clara and Savage had settled into a comfortable routine, one built on trust, patience, and companionship. But the bond between them had grown stronger than ever. Savage was no longer just a timid dog learning to trust. He was confident, playful, and protective in the gentlest way. One morning, Clara woke to find Savage already alert at the bedroom door. His ears twitched, tail wagging lightly, as if he had been waiting for her to wake. She smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Good morning, Savage," she said softly. He barked once, a friendly sound, and ran to the window, looking outside as though inviting her to start the day. The morning was bright and calm, perfect for a walk. Clara clipped on his leash and opened the door. Savage stepped out confidently, tail held high, eyes scanning his surroundings with curiosity rather than fear. Their walks had become adventures, opportunities to explore the world together. And today, Clara had a special plan. She had decided to take Savage to the park outside of town, a place with wide open spaces, trees, and a small stream. It would be a test, a way to see just how far he had come in trusting the world.
She spoke softly as they walked. "We'll take it slow, Savage."
Just you and me, exploring. Nothing to worry about. The journey was quiet, the sun warming their backs. Along the way, they passed familiar neighbors who had once whispered about Savage, the dangerous dog. Now they greeted him with smiles and nods. Savage responded with a wag of his tail, ears relaxed, showing the world that he had truly changed. Clara felt a sense of pride and gratitude. He had worked so hard, overcoming fear and mistrust, and now people were seeing the dog she had always known he could be. When they arrived at the park, Savage's eyes widened in awe. The space was vast, filled with soft grass, tall trees, and birds that chirped overhead. He sniffed the air, taking in the new scents, and then trotted alongside Clara, occasionally stopping to explore a bush or chase a leaf drifting in the breeze. She let him off the leash, trusting the progress he had made. He paused, looked back at her, and then ran forward, playful and free. Clara watched as he ran in wide circles, tail wagging, ears flopping, full of joy. It was a side of him she had only dreamed of seeing, the carefree, happy dog beneath the fear and scars. He barked once, lightly, chasing a butterfly for a few moments before returning to her side. She laughed softly, a sound filled with relief and love. "Look at you, Savage. You're amazing." As they explored, Clara noticed other dogs in the park, some with their owners and some playing together. Savage observed them carefully at first, standing tall but cautious. Then, slowly, he approached a friendly Labrador, sniffing and wagging his tail. The Labrador's owner smiled. "He's so gentle and well-behaved. How did you manage that?" Clara crouched to Savage's level, stroking his fur. "Patience, care, and love," she said softly. "And a lot of trust." Savage leaned into her hand, his eyes soft, almost as if he understood every word. The afternoon passed in a quiet, joyful rhythm. Savage played, explored, and even rested by the stream, watching the water flow. Clara found herself thinking about the long journey that had brought them here, from the day he had been tied to a fence, scared and alone, to this moment of freedom and trust. Every step had been worth it. When they returned home, Clara noticed something unusual. Smoke, a faint wisp, rising from the direction of her neighbor's barn. Her heart quickened. She hurried toward the source, Savage following closely, alert and attentive. When they reached the barn, she realized it was on fire. Flames licked the edges of the structure, and thick smoke poured into the sky. Clara froze for a moment, unsure what to do. Then she saw it, the animals inside. Chickens and goats were trapped, frightened and unable to escape on their own. Clara's mind raced. She knew she couldn't do this alone. She called out for help, but the fire was spreading quickly. Savage, sensing the urgency, ran toward the barn. Clara yelled for him to stop, but he ignored her, barking loudly as he ran inside through an open side door. Her heart pounded with fear, but she followed, shouting for him and the animals. Savage moved with purpose, carefully guiding the smaller animals toward the door. Chickens followed him, clucking nervously, and even the goats moved as he barked softly, leading them away from the flames. Clara felt a surge of admiration and relief. This was the dog she had rescued. Brave, intelligent, and protective. Within minutes, the animals were safely outside. The fire department arrived shortly after, containing the blaze before it could spread further. Clara stood back, breathing heavily, watching Savage as he shook the smoke from his fur, tail wagging lightly, as if proud of what he had accomplished. He had not only saved himself, but had protected the others, showing courage and loyalty that few could have imagined from the dog once feared by everyone. Neighbors and bystanders began to gather, murmuring in amazement. "That dog is incredible," one said. "He saved all of them," another added. "You must be proud." "Look at him!" Clara knelt beside Savage, brushing soot from his fur. "I've always known you were special," she whispered. He licked her hand gently, as if acknowledging her words. The event changed everything. The townspeople who had once avoided or feared him now saw Savage for who he truly was, a symbol of resilience, courage, and transformation. Children came to pet him, adults admired him, and the story of his bravery spread quickly through the town. Clara realized that the dog once called Savage had not only changed himself, but had also changed the way others saw the world, proving that fear and labels could be replaced with love and understanding. In the days following the fire, Clara and Savage returned to their quiet life, though now with a sense of accomplishment and pride. Savage continued to play, explore, and grow in confidence. He followed Clara everywhere, not out of fear, but because he loved her and trusted her. He had become more than a pet. He was her companion, her friend, and a reminder of the power of patience and kindness. Clara often reflected on their journey. She remembered the first day she had seen him tied to the fence, the scars, the fear, and the wariness in his eyes. She remembered the small steps they had taken together, the cautious walks, the quiet moments in the house, the games in the garden. And now, seeing him happy, confident, and brave, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Evenings became their favorite time. They would sit together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Savage would rest his head on her lap, occasionally nudging her hand for a gentle pat. Clara would speak softly, telling him stories or whispering words of encouragement. In those quiet moments, the bond between them felt unbreakable, a connection forged through trust, love, and shared experience. Clara also shared their story with the town. She talked about patience, understanding, and the importance of giving animals a chance to heal. Many people were inspired, beginning to treat their own pets and strays with greater care and compassion. Savage had become more than just a dog. He had become a symbol of hope, proving that even those who seemed broken could flourish with love and understanding. One sunny afternoon, Clara decided to capture some memories. She took photos of Savage playing in the garden, running along the path, and resting in the sun. Each image told a story of resilience, growth, and the incredible bond they shared. She created a small album, not just for herself, but for the community, to remind everyone of the power of patience, trust, and care. The transformation was not just visible to Clara, but to everyone who saw him. The once feared dog was now celebrated for his bravery, gentleness, and loyalty. Children ran to greet him, neighbors smiled as he passed, and even strangers admired his story. Clara often found herself smiling, thinking about how far they had come together. At night, as Clara prepared for bed, she noticed Savage lying at her feet, eyes half closed, breathing softly and evenly. She knelt beside him, stroking his fur. "You've come so far, my friend," she whispered. "You're brave, kind, and free. I'm so proud of you." Savage lifted his head briefly, eyes meeting hers, and gave a small, contented sigh before resting again. In that quiet moment, Clara realized that the journey had changed them both. She had saved him, yes, but he had also saved her. From loneliness, from routine, from the ordinary patterns of life that sometimes felt empty. Together, they had discovered the meaning of trust, resilience, and unconditional love. The days turned into months, and the seasons changed. Savage continued to grow stronger, healthier, and more confident. He explored, played, and even learned new tricks. But more importantly, he had become a part of the community, a beloved presence that reminded everyone of the power of patience, care, and second chances. And every evening, as Clara sat on the porch with him resting beside her, she whispered softly, "You're not Savage anymore. You're brave, gentle, and loved. And you always will be."